So how often do you get to photograph an actress from one of your favorite TV shows? Well, for me that doesn't happen very often, but I get to do that today, and I get to use the Zeiss 28mm f1.4 Otus lens. Today's the day of the Zeiss Otus 28mm f1.4 lens. I'm very, very excited to test out this lens and use it during a photo shoot. This is going to be really, really exciting. And I've actually already taken some test shots and I want to share them with you. But I want to first talk about why the Zeiss Otus 28mm f1.4 for me. So let me break this down and unpackage it here a little bit. A lot of people would probably criticize me for using the Zeiss Otus 28mm on the A99II, but I have some specific reasons for doing this. All right, so first off, why 28mm? Why such a fancy lens for the 28mm focal length? Well, scrolling through my portfolio, that focal length is one of the most popular that I use, that I've been using over these past several years. Some of my best or my favorite shots are taken around that focal length, and probably will be in the future. So to have a high-performing lens right there around 28mm actually helps me out a lot. And a lot of people would probably say the Zeiss Otus is a very expensive lens, and it is. And you can knock off a little bit of that price if you buy it used. However, it's not as expensive as, for example, a telephoto lens like a 300mm f2.8 or a 400mm or 500mm f4. It's cheaper than those lenses. And obviously, I'm not usually a sports photographer or an action photographer or a wildlife where I need those long, very long focal lengths. So for me, actually, it kind of seems like a deal for the type of photography that I do to have such a high-performing lens at that focal length. I think a lot of people are also going to ask, well, why are you attaching and how are you attaching, and I'll talk about that, the Zeiss Otus 20mm f1.4 to your Sony A99 Mark II. You've got that translucent mirror in the way, why not just use the Sony A7R II? Well, that actually directly relates to a shoot that I have coming up here in a few weeks, and I'll be doing a vlog on it. I have a helicopter photo shoot, another one coming up, over Manhattan at night. The ability to shoot at up to 12 frames per second when you're in such a tight circumstance where the helicopter has very tight areas to maneuver, you don't have a lot of flexibility, you need to be able to take a lot of shots at once in a very short amount of time. The A99II in combination with the Zeiss Otus beats the A7R II for me because I can take more shots. When you're hanging out of a helicopter and you're trying to get Central Park, for example, in perfectly squared and lined up, sometimes you have to kind of fire from your hip when you're in that challenging circumstance and take a lot of shots per second to try to make sure that everything is level and make sure that you're getting the best possible shoot that you can. So when you So when you get back and take a look at your pictures, you have several options to look through and you can pick the best one. So the A99II and the Zeiss Otus pair up actually perfectly for that. Now, how do I do this? A lot of people have been asking, since the Zeiss Otus is only sold in the Canon and the Nikon mounts, how am I attaching it to my Sony A99 Mark II? And I've talked about this in a few videos in the past. There's an adapter where you can take certain Nikon lenses and adapt them to Sony A-mount. You can only do it with manual focus capability. It doesn't have any autofocus capability, but the Zeiss Otus is manual focus only, so that actually works out pretty well. So I'm excited about that. All right, so let me talk a little bit about the lens and some of the testing that I've already done. Let me share some photos from the testing that I've already done. All right, so I actually went out to the river in Chicago River in a few different locations and tried to test and see how well the Zeiss Otus 20mm performed wide open. And I also went over to the same spot I'm going today just a few days ago to test and see how it would perform shooting the skyline at infinity focus. So first, let's talk about and show you the river pictures. I tested all of the the Zeiss Otus 20mm with the Sony Zeiss 24mm f2 and the Sony G series for the A-mount, the 35mm f1.4. So I tested shooting down the river at f1.4 for both the lenses when possible, and then f2 for all three, and kind of moving up the apertures to see how do they all compare in terms of sharpness, image quality, rendering, my own subjective interpretation. And here's what I found looking through these images. the Zeiss Otus beat, obviously, the Sony Zeiss 24mm f2 and the Sony G-Series 35mm f1.4 for image quality and sharpness at every aperture. Obviously, the 24mm only goes down to f2, but it beat it there and it blew away, which a lot of people can expect, the Sony 35mm f1.4 G lens for the Sony A-mount system. Just a few observations. The water, I've noticed, just renders beautifully. For some reason on the Zeiss Otus, it's probably its ability to just have almost no chromatic aberration. The ripples on the water just look absolutely beautiful. The 24mm Sony Zeiss f2 did a really good job as well. And frankly, I kind of expected a little more out of the Otus, comparing the Otus 24mm f2 and the Sony Zeiss 24mm f2. Of course, this is all about expectations, right? I almost had in my head the idea that the Zeiss Otus is just going to blow me away with absolute perfection. And it gets very, very close to that, but not quite as much as I expected. Or maybe I should say that the Sony Zeiss 24mm f2 for the Sony A-mount does pretty darn well, considering it kind of keeps up with the Otus. Obviously, these are different focal lengths, 24 versus 28 versus 35, but they're similar enough, and it kind of gives me a good idea. And like I already alluded to, the 35mm f1.4, if you shoot that thing at like f8, f11, you can get pretty sharp images, but nothing like the Otus. The Otus just blows it away. Now, I also tested all three lenses shooting the Chicago skyline, right? Like I said, we're actually headed tonight for this shoot, and I noticed the same thing. The water looked absolutely beautiful on the Zeiss Otus. The 24mm Sony Zeiss did very well as well. The 35mm didn't do very well wide open. They're getting closer when you stop it down when you're shooting at f4, f5.6, f8. They get a little more similar, but still the Zeiss Otus beats all of them at every single aperture. So we'll see. I'm gonna use it for the portrait photo shoot tonight. I'm excited about that. As I mentioned here in this video in the beginning, I'm gonna be shooting an actress. Really excited about this. She's actually been featured on, I can't remember, I think it's Chicago Med. It was either Chicago Fire, Chicago PD. She's involved in a number of other projects as well. I'm really excited to be able to have the chance to work with her. This should be really cool. I'm going to try to get some very cool environmental portrait shots. So obviously I'm going to be using the Sony Zeiss, or the Sony Otus, I'm sorry, the Zeiss Otus 20mm f1.4 to shoot her, and I'll be using it wide open just to see how it performs with that wide angle shot, trying to get a little bit of bokeh in the background with the city, having it just be a little bit out of focus. We'll see how that goes. I also have the Sony Zeiss 135mm f1.8 that I'll be bringing along just to get some headshots and some more traditional upper body portraits and stuff as well. So I'm very excited about all this. I'm also super thankful I have Samantha working with me today. She's gonna be helping me out, trying to move some soft boxes around, recording some video of the shoot, and she's also gonna be holding the lenses for me as I'm making all these quick changes. I appreciate her help. So very thankful to Samantha, very excited to work with Jessica. Let's go ahead and head over to, of course, my favorite spot over by Norley Island in the Adler Planetarium. We're gonna get those epic skyline views. All right, so I've arrived. I'll be working with a fantastic model. She's got this epic look. I'm very, very excited. And of course, I've got some awesome lenses that I'm gonna be using tied with my A99II. All right, first off, I've got the Sony Zeiss 50mm f1.4. I'm not even sure I'm gonna be using it. We'll see. It has awesome, beautiful bokeh though, and it probably is gonna be able to provide a little bit tighter shot when I wanna get more of the city in the background. I've got the Sony Zeiss 135 f1.8, which I've used on my vlog before. Beautiful rendering, super sharpness wide open. A great lens, works awesome with the A99II. Try to get some headshots with this lens. We'll see how it turns out. And then finally, the beast, the Zeiss Otus, the f1.4 28mm. We're gonna try to get some full body shots with the skyline in the background at f1.4 and see how this lens does in low light. Let's go ahead and get our gear set up and get started.